All right, let's see. These go. All right. Good morning. Happy Saturday. Let's see here. Some coffee ready to go. All right, welcome. If you are new and don't know who I am, first of all, thanks for watching. I am Tim. My name is Tim. I go by FoamyGuy on GitHub and Discord, and I am usually streaming at this time each week, working on stuff related to CircuitPython. You can learn more about CircuitPython at its website, circuitpython.org, if you don't know what it is. It is basically a version of Python that runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers. When you use CircuitPython with these devices, they will typically plug into your computer with a thumb drive. Plug into your computer with a USB cable and then show up like a thumb drive on your computer. There's a Python code file on there that you can edit. When you save it, the microcontroller will run the Python code for you. That is the high level, very, very, very quick version. As always, we will say thanks to Adafruit. Adafruit is a hardware and software company based out of New York. They're the ones who make CircuitPython possible by paying the team of folks, including myself, who work on CircuitPython to do so. They also design and manufacture lots of CircuitPython capable boards and lots of things that you can hook up to CircuitPython capable boards. And they pay the developers like myself and a handful of others to work on drivers and all sorts of projects and documentation and everything. So huge thanks to them. If you want to help support CircuitPython, one of the easiest ways to do it is just purchase hardware from them, which you can do at their website, adafruit.com. We are jumping right back in today to the Fruit Jam launcher and editor. I'm actually going to take the SD card out for now. I'm going to unmount the SD card. CircuitPython 10 alpha something. I don't know exactly what version it got added, but there's a thing that kind of passes through the SD card. I'm going to reset as well to try to get that to take effect. Which is really cool because it lets you see the files that are on the SD card that's connected to the CircuitPython device on your computer. They show up as another drive, which is cool. But the way that I have my PyCharm set up, it tries to like immediately scan and index all the files that it sees. So the SD card, if it has a lot of stuff on it, it makes PyCharm take more time. And I'm not using the SD card right now, so we can just get rid of that. I am also just going to take a backup of this device, which is the Fruit Jam, before we do anything else, because I'm going to be playing with 25. I'll make that 0. I don't know. Maybe we'll end up with another one today. Let's see. But I'm going to be playing with mounting the drive as writable. So if things go wrong, then the drive is going to end up in a potentially corrupted state. So I want to have a good backup before we do anything that we could go back to afterwards. That is very tiny. Let's try to that a slightly more reasonable size without much seizure action here. So the thing I want to start working on, which I kind of hinted at, is the writability of the drive. So yesterday during Deep Dive, I was working on the editor and the launcher a bit. And the next thing so if I press E on the keyboard, I have a keyboard plugged in here. That's how I was moving the focus around. If I press E on the keyboard, that's going to open it up to that file that I had highlighted. In this case, it was the matrix file in the editor, the text editor or code editor. But if we look down at the bottom here, it has this RO, which means read only. So technically, like, we could type stuff into here, But we can't actually save it because this file is at /apps metro CodePy, and that is mounted as read-only, so we could not save this file right now. What I would like to do is make a hotkey inside the editor. So I'm thinking maybe Control W. We did Control R for run last night. Let's make sure that works. Oh, but I put, well, I was gonna say, oh, but I put that random hello in, but of course that doesn't save. So yeah, Control R runs. Something I'd like to work on later is maybe after you run, maybe we can get it to go back to the editor. That would be cool. In this case, I'll quit out of Matrix and it's going to take us back to the desktop. So like if we were in the editor, we're now back on the desktop. Of course, we can enter the editor again, which is not so terrible, but it'd be nice if it brought you back. But first, I want to work on the read write. So I'm thinking Control W. You could press it, and I would like to reboot the device, mount the drive as writable, and then come back to this editor with this file open so that you're like ready to start editing the file that you did that on. And there's a couple of things that we are going to need in order to make that happen. So one thing I'm going to do is we are going to think about this a little bit. So I already have in my bootpy, I have turning auto reload off, and I have looking for a bootpy argv file, and then if we have that file, we launch the code file that we found in it. There will be a list inside of it. Actually, it looks like there is just a text inside of it, not a list. Because we just read that, we didn't do any JSON. Okay, so that's one thing we're going to change. This is going to have a list instead of just a string. We're going to actually delete instead. So basically, this is like a mechanism that lets something decide what should launch after bootpy runs. And I think what we want to do here is actually I'm going to rename this to just boot animation. And I think what we want to do here, because I have my eye, like obviously the animation doesn't have anything to do with the editor, but I have my eye on we need to integrate with the animation as well, because that's going to be ultimately in the final sort of flow here. So I think we'll work on bootpy a little bit here by saying we essentially want if this did not happen, so that would be an OS error, or once we get to JSON, maybe it could be failed JSON parsing or something. But if that did not happen, what we want to do is actually set the next code file to the boot animation.py. So if we specified a file that we want to launch before, then we launch that file next. Otherwise, we launch the boot animation next. And we're in bootpy here, so we don't actually have to call supervisor.reload. That's just going to happen. Well, reload's not going to happen, but the next thing that happens after CodePy is launching the next code file. So in this case, we kind of change it right before it's about to get launched. But then at the end of the boot animation, we do want to go to CodePy. And this time we do need supervisor.reload because after the boot animation ends, it's not just going to launch CodePy automatically, I don't think. So now it will. So this should get us from boot through the boot animation and into the launcher, I think. So let's try that, and then reset with the button. All right, boot animation, nice. Into CodePy. All right, we're in the launcher. Very good. So the next thing I want to do then is from the... So inside BootPy, we need this to be a bit fancier. Right now, we're just reading BootPy argv, assuming that it is the next code file, and then that's it. We need more stuff. For one thing, we're going to want to be able to pass arguments to the next code file as well, which means that we are going to want to have a list of arguments. But realistically, we also need... I also want a writability flag, a Boolean that represents whether the thing should be mounted as writable. So we have a pretty intrinsic, we have a pretty fundamental thing here that we need to decide about the way that argv works, which is if it's going to be a list, is it going to be such that you must pass the entire list every time? Or maybe we could do something where like the first argument represents a mode or something. Do we have argparse on CircuitPython? Can you argparse a string anyway, or a list? Does not seem like it. No. Okay. I think for right now, the way I am going to do it is I am going to say you have to always pass essentially they will work like Python args, not named args. Positional args is the right term. So you will have to pass all the ones that are up to the one you want to use. And I believe then the first one is going to be the storage flag. The next one is going to be what file to launch next. And then all of the remaining ones are going to get passed to that file that we launch next. So 0 is the storage RW flag. 1 is next code file. 2 to N args to pass to next code file. Put those out just to keep that aligned. Actually. Okay. And then the next thing actually that I want to be part of this is I want to algorithmically do this name. So this is like we have BootPy we're reading dot boot underscore pi underscore argv. I want a more generalized way to generate that. So I'm going to say argv file helper. And we're going to make a function get argv file name. Maybe we don't really, do we need, I don't know if we need get. We can just say argv file name. You'll pass it a Python code file name. And then you will get back something more like this. But I am going to switch it up a little bit, I think. So the Python code file name, actually it's going to be the Python code file path. It's going to include the entire path in it because that's what's in underscore underscore file, which is what we're going to pass to this. I want from pathlib. Okay. So is there a, there's current, or just file name? Can I get just the file name? Stem name, okay. So what we are gonna do is return fstring save. So we're always gonna look on saves. And we always are going to start with a dot. And then we are going to have path.name. Is that a string or split? It seems like that should be a string, right? No idea. Okay. Maybe we just leave it alone. I was gonna like switch it to an underscore pi. Maybe we just leave it. So we could go dot original file name, which will include dot pi, and then I think we add an argv on the end. From argv file helper import argv file name. So like apps Metro RP 2350 breakout code.py. Oh shoot, we have a problem though. We can't do that because that's gonna just be code.py. I think So we need more than just the name. I guess we could do the full path and we could just get the slashes replaced by something. or replaced by nothing, I guess, if we really wanted to. Found method has no replace. Oh, it's a method. Maybe prints a string. Okay, I'm pretty tired already of doing that this way, so let's put the test inside of here. Forgot to print. Doesn't count because name is not main, I guess. Okay. Seems like we're missing an F, which is a little bit odd. There we go. Okay, so dot. It did give us a dot underscore, which is a bit awkward, but it's dot underscore apps slash. Well, and then we already had some underscores. I don't think that matters really, though, honestly. As long as underscore underscore file is going to always resolve to the correct thing, that's really what matters. Because we don't need to go back from this the other way. So this is one way, but that's okay. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Don't need that anymore. Okay, and then this is gonna no longer be that. Instead, it's gonna be we're gonna call the function argv file name, and we're gonna pass in file. So this will be more generalized, right? Every file can read its own argv file this way, and then any other file can write one for another file if it knows the absolute path, I guess, and the right way to call this to get the name. Instead of rename, actually what I'm gonna do is possible argv file name. I mean, it's not really possible. Like, it's possible because the file might not exist, but I'm just gonna say arg file name. But then it's gonna be one letter off. It's kind of awkward. Did we return? Yeah, okay. All right, because we printed also, so file can get read there, and then here we're not going to rename it. I renamed it because it's less permanent than deleting it. If I wanted to test again, I could just rename it back instead of having to write a new one. But we could always make a script that writes a new one if we needed to, I think. So let's get rid of that. We will remove it. So that's going to be arg file. I want to do the JSON stuff. So we're actually going to say args equals load the file. And then So we're going to assume that args is going to be a list. It's basically going to work like argv, which is a list. And we know the 0, 1 has to be the RW flag. So that's going to be, I think I'm going to say that is called writable, and it's going to be true if you want it to be writable. So writable equals args 0. So that's going to be true or false. I think we want to... Well, we can't remove it before we open the file. I think actually here, we want to move these back, and then I think we actually want to just delete this file ASAP. Basically, once we read it, we want to delete it to be sure that anything else, because like if any of this goes wrong, we want to make sure that file's not there, because all the stuff we're going to do is based on what was in that file, and if we get messed up, then we'll be in an infinite loop if we don't delete the file. Especially since we're in bootpy in this case. We want to read that. We get the argument list from it. We immediately delete the file. And then we are going to go and get our actual values. So writable is 0. Next code file is args1. But we actually need to say if length of args is greater than 0, greater than equals to 1. And we also, if it's greater than 2, we want remaining args is all the rest of them. That should be right, I think. So, like if we imagine an args list that was false, you know, apps, metro, whatever, I'm not going to fill in a real one. And then like something, and like 1. L2, this is everything after that. Okay, very good. That's remaining. I will say next code file, we'll start these as none. Okay, so if we have remaining args, we need to write those to the argv file for the next code file. So if remaining args is not none, we need to get the next code argv file name from the next code file. We can open that. It's going to be writable because we're writing to it. It's inside saves, so we don't need the storage for that. And we want to f.write JSON.dumps remaining args. So that will be the list of the rest of the arguments. That will close the file. Okay, then we're going to go and set the next code file, so that's going to get launched. And then inside that code file, of course, it will have to know that this is a thing, and it will have to read its file and decide what to do with the arguments. But if it does, then we have now kind of this system where we can tell bootpy to launch another script, and we can also give bootpy some arguments to pass to that other script. Will be perfect for the editor because that's what we want to do exactly. We're going to want to launch the editor and give it the file to edit, and skip the boot animation, all when we come back from remounting the drive as writable, which we're also going to get to here in a second because we have this flag. So I always, when I'm doing writable, I always pull up learn CircuitPython essentials, like storage. Maybe we should do read-only, actually. We should make this match. So instead of writable, I'm going to call this read-only. And like true will be more like the default value. Because that way we don't have to worry about flopping it for this, which is going to be nicer, I think. Yeah. Oh. So it actually is false more by default, which is fine. Yeah, read only, so no. Yeah. Yeah. False is default. Because by default, CircuitPython is read-only to its own drive. It is writable to the PC. And so when you change it to true, then it's writable to its own drive, and it is not writable to the PC. So then this is talking about if you use digital I/O, but that's fine. Mostly we care about when we pass it to remount, it's read-only. If it is false, argument refers to the read-write state of CircuitPython. I think did I just do all of that backwards? If it is false, then CircuitPython is not read-only to itself. But if it's false, then it's writable to itself. When the value is true, it's read-only to itself, and it's writable to the computer. So that one, yeah, that one is the default, more so. When it's false, then it's writable to itself. What is up, my friend over on Twitch, Microrosine? I think, yeah, so when it is false, that is what we are calling make it writable for the editor. Or we'll try to call it read-only now because that's the name it actually is. So let's say we need to import storage. Just call me Mike. Will do. Thanks for tuning in, Mike. Hope you're having a nice day. Let's do storage remount, and then it should take, oh, mount path I think is just root. Look at the code to make sure. Doesn't actually mount anything. Where's bootpy? All the way up here. Okay, there, yeah. So slash and then read-only equals, read-only will just be read-only for us. And then I think storage read-only flag. So false. Yeah, false means that it is writable. CircuitPy. False means writable CircuitPython. Are you a programmer coder? I didn't fully understand what's the difference between these words because I don't speak English. Yeah, no worries. I am. Yeah, I'm programmer, software developer, coder, all fairly basically the same thing as far as I'm concerned. Writable to CircuitPython. True means read-only. Say that. In this case, to CircuitPython is also kind of analogous to the editor. Okay, so that should remount based on the first argument. And it should call next code file based on the next. So let's just try this out with a test. I'm going to make a new file, code test boot args with, let's say, boot args file from argv file helper port argv file name of, it's not file, but it will be /boot.py, no slash, argv file name of that with open argv file writable as f. Then we want to write JSON dumps. Could I give you some tips, please? I got to study in programming C for the university, but I never programmed anything. Well, you found yourself in an awkward spot if you've never programmed anything, but you got to program C for university. I mean, my biggest tip, honestly, is like practice a lot, which is maybe not the tip that everyone wants to hear, but programming, like, once you understand the basic fundamentals, I mean, one tip I would have is, like, C is probably a pretty hard language to learn as your first language. So if you've never programmed anything at all, if you have any ability to, I would say try to start with something that is not C, at least to understand the fundamentals of like variables and for loops and if statements and while loops and functions and basically those things. If you go to a different language, you'll be able to learn those things without having to potentially fight syntax quite as hard. Hey, which app are you working on? Java's more preferable, I guess, than C. Yeah, I would agree with you. Java was kind of my first big language, essentially, and I found it quite nice. So Java's a nice one. These days, like Python would be probably the one I recommend to people, but I'm biased. Like I work on Python stuff day in and day out because I think it's just a really nice language to get stuff done with. So if you have some opportunity to do like a basic tutorial with Python, I think you might get some value out of that, especially if you never programmed anything, because you'll learn like these fundamental building blocks of programming, the variables, the control statements, the Boolean logic, the loop statements. And once you learn all of those things, they all apply to C as well. You'll have to learn different syntax, different symbols to type into the code. But you'll understand the concepts, which I imagine would make it a lot easier. I had an idea with a friend. I could have asked ChatGPT for a program in C and do reverse engineering on that, but I don't even know if the language works. I mean, I would not recommend that route because if you don't already know C, then it's going to be hard to reverse engineer C. Or like if you don't already know some language, right? If you knew some other programming language, you can generally look at some code in another language and get a decent idea of what's going on. But if you don't already know programming, it's going to be really hard to look at code in order to learn. Like look at code and reverse engineer it yourself in order to learn. The other potential problem with that I see is like ChatGPT sometimes puts out code that doesn't work. So then you are trying to reverse engineer code that doesn't actually do what you might think it does. If you always make sure to run it, like if you know how to run code and like troubleshoot problems with it, which is hard, or if you start with really, really, really small programs that don't do very much at all, you could probably get by learning some of the basics that way. I have to imagine, like, if you have access to YouTube or something, I have to imagine there's better, like, tutorials. If you search around on YouTube for basic programming tutorials, and then you could put in whatever language you want to use, really, there's going to be ones for all of them, I think. Probably that's going to get you farther than trying to reverse engineer stuff that comes out of ChatGPT, but I have never tried. Does Linux help? Linux does not help you learn to program. In my opinion, Linux helps you do some things that tend to be associated with the career, with the job of programming, or at least with my career job of programming. Interacting with microcontrollers over USB is, I think, easier on Linux than Windows, and I don't really want to use Mac, so I don't really consider it an option. But it's not impossible on Windows. Plenty of talented people use Windows and get by just fine. But I do think some stuff is easier with Linux. Like, I started out as an Android developer, which also had a similar thing of communicating to the device over USB, so Linux made that a bit easier. Someone asked, I think, what program we're working on. This is well, right now it's the boot script for FruitJam, which is a CircuitPython device, so there's a lot going on in that. If you don't really know what CircuitPython is or whatever, you can mention in the chat. I'll give you a bit more of a high-level description, and it'll make it more clear what I'm actually working on. But we're working on the launcher and the editor that will go on this little microcontroller device. So we should be okay. Yeah. I was working on this test, so we were writing this file. So we're gonna write. So I'm gonna start by not doing storage. So we're gonna set that to true because that is kind of the default value. We're gonna not try the harder or different stuff first. So we're gonna say true. We're going to give it a file. The file is code editor.py. I would never recommend Python as a first language because my first language was Python and I was very much lost. Then I started with C++ and struggled a bit with pointers, but it worked for me. I learned basic data structures better. Yeah, I mean, Java will have the same problem as well, where you don't get pointers necessarily. I think Python or not Python as your first language comes down a lot to, like, does the fact that white space matters and tabs indicate blocks jive with your head or not? That kind of is not so fun for some people, and even admittedly coming from Java, for me, that was like one of the things I struggled with Python early on, but I have come to like it. I've come to, like, be fine with it, I would say. I don't necessarily have a preference over it versus curly brackets at this point, but code editor, and then code editor already should be accepting a file name, I think, right? We did that yesterday. Yeah, and we already load this and we get the first one from it. So if we just give this... Well, so the problem, though, is we need to actually... So it's expecting JSON, right? So we actually need to JSON.dumps another list, even though it's only going to have one thing in it. So let's say we want to open this to... test.text. Put some stuff in it. Let's do it on not a code file first. Text. Are you building a code editor? Yes, essentially. I'm trying to build a launcher and a code editor and kind of a whole boot up sequence. Here, I'll show you what we have so far. So this is HDMI capture from the FruitJam device. I will tell you a bit more about the FruitJam device in a minute. Oh, I've already broken it though. How did we break that? 1 second. Let me see how we broke that. It's probably just half finished code, right? What did it say? I don't think we got the keep the output. Is it in boot out, maybe? It is. Okay, takes 1, but 0 were given. About 19, takes 1. 19. Oh. Yeah. That has to be this file. Okay, here we go. Let's try that again. Thanks for the help. Have a nice day, man. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for hanging out for a bit. All right, so we reboot this. It goes to BootPy, so we have a boot up animation. Here's this. Fruit Jam is the name of the device, so we get this nice little thing. There's a jingle. There's like audio with it as well that's not set up to capture. Then it goes to the desktop. So the launcher menu, basically. You can go through pages. And then when you're on one, if you press E, it will take you to the editor, which will edit, it will open up the file that we were on. So I had matrix highlighted, I pressed E, and that took me to the matrix file here. Currently, it's mounted as read-only, so we can't actually change this file. I mean, we can type into it, but I can't save the changes. And so I'm working on the workflow to ultimately be able to press Control-W. The device is going to have to reboot and go into read-write mode. It's going to make it so that we are going to be allowed to save this file. And then I want it to come all the way straight back to the editor and skip the whole boot animation, skip the desktop launcher, just come straight back here. So I'm working on that flow of like all of the sort of mechanisms we need along the way to get that skip from thing to thing to happen correctly. But it is ultimately an aim of using the editor, making the editor, essentially. Test.text we did here. So where was that boot test? Boot args test? No, what was that? Code test boot args. Should have done boot test args or something maybe. Anyway, whatever. So for now, this does true, it does editor, and then we want, let's go test.text, and let's save that, and then I'm going to run this. It's going to create the argv file for boot. Then we're going to reset, and we'll see if we launch into the editor with read-write, no, with read-only mode on still, but into the text file. So we'll see if we skip the animation. That UI reminds me of a Turbo C++ editor. Nice. Yeah, it's kind of in some ways it's meant to be kind of a throwback to sort of early all-in-one type things. Not quite Commodore 64 because it's not, you know, dual colored or whatever. It's got a bit more going on than that, but it's meant to be a throwback to that style of sort of all-in-one device where you can edit your code on there and run it, go back and forth and play with it. Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of good work on the hardware and the CircuitPython team and all sorts of folks. It's kind of super cool to see it all come together with all these different components able to actually interact with each other. So we should be able to test this. So let's go here. We can just import code test boot args. That's just gonna create the file for us. If we want to have a quick peek at it, we could. If we knew the right name for it. ._boot.py.argv. If we got that right. Okay. We got escaped quotes because it's JSON, needs double quotes. Yeah. I think that looks good to me, so let's try this out. Actually, one thing is the editor. I don't think... Okay, yeah, it's not getting its argv file, so let's do that. I mean, it's getting a file, but it's getting the one I hard-coded yesterday. We need to get the one we generated with this. So from argv file helper, import argv file name. argv file name of file. The file we're inside of, which is editor. And then we will remove the same file. So actually I will argv file. Doesn't really matter, we could just call that again, but it feels wasteful to call the function another time. Store the string for a minute. Let's do that. Yeah, okay. Should maybe call this edit file, but it's fine for right now. Okay. I think maybe that should work. So we saved our file. I'm just going to reset with the button. Got to boot. Oh, no, we went to boot animation. Interesting. Did we go to boot animation? Oh. We don't return from here or anything that makes the thing end, right? So even though this exception did not get thrown, we still got down to here and called this. So we probably set the next code file to the editor, and we did the whole arguments thing, but then we immediately set the next code file to boot animation. Okay. I mean, that's easy enough, right? We just put this in here, I think. And then we need to run that again, and then reset again. Nope. So maybe the file doesn't exist? But why would the file not exist? Anything there? So we have... Currently we have not boot and we have code editor. Not boot, I think, is just because I renamed it in the past. That's an old thing. Could probably just delete that. In fact, I don't even think it had the JSON in it anyway, so... Set of saves. So yeah, there's read-only. That's basically what we're trying to get. Build a mechanism to work around at this point. So... Okay. And for some new tunes. 1 minute. Hey, thanks for the follow, Mike. We're on Twitch. Although Mike might have left already. So we got that one, but we didn't launch for some reason still. We don't have any exception or anything. Print launching next code file. Print launching boot animation. All right, let's see which one of those we end up seeing. if any. Launching boot animation. Oh, okay. Well, that time I actually did not rerun the thing to write the file, so that's on me. We need to run test boot args. Okay. We have ._boot .py.argv. Let's say print arg file. Also. Okay, so we have that. We're printing out a bunch of stuff. Gonna reset again. A lot of that stuff doesn't come through serial, but it will be in boot out. ._boot.py.argv. And that was inside /saves. So the only thing I can think here is, are we not getting the right, and we're writing the next thing, so the file is working. Args file found and loaded. Print args file removed. Print next code args written. Print settings storage read only 2. Oh, that seems like a problem. First of all, we don't even have an F here. How does this even work? This shouldn't even exist still, should it? Do context processor variables continue existing after the block? Anyway, now that I see it, it's definitely wrong. It should be args 1. Well, actually, we already have next code file. We should just use that. Yeah, Lord only knows what that was doing. I have no idea what that could have been doing. Well, I mean, we saw launching boot animation. Why would it have been boot animation? Because it read out of... I don't know why it would have been... Okay, well, we have a lot of extra prints now. Let's see if we get anything useful. If I try to do this focus different, can we get it to where those files stay open as long as I don't try to look at them? Oh, the drive's gone? Okay. I did go to boot animation. Interesting. So we only did arg file saves and then launching boot animation. I didn't run this before? Args. There we go. Sort of. Closer. We launched the right thing. We launched the right thing. So closer. I think it started to launch the editor and then it failed. Editor 225 string index out of range. I'm gonna guess that it got its file wrong, probably. Let's go here and print opening file. Try the whole thing again. Opening test.txt, which is in the root and does exist. So editor 57 is where we launched this, and then we are into editor 225. Why would the editor be broken on this file? Visible cursor text buffer 00. I mean, that pretty much has to mean that pretty much no. Maybe we need a slash. I'm gonna try that. Know if it will make a difference or not, but I'm gonna try it. So let's say code test boot args. What if we had a slash here? No. Oh. This is a list still. Why are we opening a list still? Should I think this doesn't need to be dumped, right? This should just be a string because we're already putting it in a list somewhere else. I think we're already putting it in a list somewhere else. We don't need to do this. And we're doubling up by doing it. And this is probably not important. Maybe this is not important either, but I'm less confident about that. Oh, there we go. All right, we are successfully into our file. And we skipped the boot animation. We went straight to the editor. Okay. And it's currently read only, so let's do this now as false, and we should be able to get it to be writable. And then we could edit that file. And then we can turn off all of those prints. Nice, there we go. Okay, so this is no longer saying read only. I think one thing eventually I'll do is change this to be like, have an RW in the same spot as where the RO would be. But right now we can see it says Control C to quit without saving and Control X to quit with saving. So I can go and say maybe edited, type on this keyboard very good, edited in CircuitPython. Happy face. And then Control X. So I pressed Control X and it printed some spaces, but did not exit. Just Control X again and nothing happens. And I press arrow keys and nothing happens. So we are like locked up. It would appear. Dang. Do we have, and we don't, oh. Interesting. So only the editor. Let me think for a second, actually. I bet you that we did stop. I bet you that we did stop. I think there's something weird about the editor. There might be. Okay. I don't think we want that. Yeah, I don't think we want that because now when we exit, I'm pretty sure I think this blocks. So I think when we Control X, this is finally going to return. And if we just go into an infinite loop after that, we're just going to sit there ignoring keyboard input and leaving whatever was on the display, which is exactly what we saw. I can't save this because the drive is now writable to CircuitPython. The good news is, honestly, though, that probably worked. That probably just worked. So if we go with open test.text readable as f, print f.read. Nice. We got the edited version. Sweet. I do not have an easy way to go back to read only. So we should probably think about that. How would I want to, would I want still just Control W? Is Control W like a toggle maybe when you're in the editor? I could probably actually, yeah, I can still keyboard from here. Control D would take me to the launcher. I don't currently have an easy way to get back to the editor into that test file, other than like the script I was using to write the args. but we pretty much now have everything we need to be able to actually get the Control W. I do want to test Control X with this change though. That should quit out of this now, I think. So let's do run these again, just redo the whole sequence. All right, so we're editing. We are in writable mode. Edit again, and then Control X. It's still stuck though. I can Control C and that gets me to the REPL, and I can Control D and that gets me back to the launcher. Why do we just hang out there though? I guess actually, yeah, I don't know why it just stays there. Maybe this does not actually return? What happens when we Control X? No. Control Q. There's like a hidden one. Just prints out the rows in the buffer. It could be handy. Here we go, Control X. So if we're not read-only, then open the file and write all the rows into it, and then return. And that is inside of a while true loop. Interesting. Can't save because it is writable. Wait, maybe this thing didn't save either. So I think when I tried to save that, it failed because it was writable. I don't know if I ever actually went back and redid it. Yeah, I don't think I did actually, so it's possible that that is actually working how I thought, and I just didn't run it with the latest one. All right, I'm gonna start doing less stuff, so I'm just gonna put a 1 at the beginning here. Control X. There we go. Okay, Control X saves and exits. It does just drop us at the REPL, so like Control C would get us, well, pressing anything, I think, right? Press any key. Can't highlight, I don't know why I tried. Press any key would have gotten us to the REPL. Control D will take us to CodePy, which is the launcher. Cool. And it is writable right now, so I could go E to edit matrix. I think we need to change the code editor, or I think we need to change the launcher to... I don't think it's probably not putting the argument file right for the editor. I'm going to reset. Oh, we lost our files that time. Okay, and then from a cold boot up, we get the animation. All right, so in the launcher, editor, yeah, we're doing this wrong still. This is hard coding the old name. So we need that argv helper from argv file helper. I need to figure out where this could live. This is kind of a random thing. Yeah. It's kind of a weird thing. Maybe we should make a library for argv file? I don't know. Let's see. We need to get argv name, file name it's called, I think. Launch file. We do probably want this. Because that leading underscore is important because underscore underscore file is going to include that. So we do actually need to make sure we have that anytime we're using argv file name. Launch file. What's wrong with that? Unreferenced? Can I import it? Is that not the right name? I don't know why this thinks that it's red. Let's see if it valid syntax. It's like it was trying to tell me something all along. Did this shrink? I feel like this got smaller. Maybe a little bit more like this when we started. There, E. Okay, so that went to matrix code. It is read-only right now, so we can't actually edit this. I'm going to Control-C, Control-D. Going to import code, test boot args. That's going to get us into writable mode. It's also going to launch editor open to that test file, which I don't really care about anymore as much, but what we'll do is just close out of it with Control-C on the correct keyboard actually though. And now it should still be writable. So I should be able to go matrix E to get to edit the matrix file, and then can try to make an actual change here. So let's do 720 by 400. And I believe the rest of this code is such that this should actually work. So Control X to save that. Control D to go back to the launcher. And then Enter with matrix highlighted to run it. And now we have the version of this with more glyphs, but slower because it's updating a much larger display. And we can Q to quit back out of it. Go to the launcher. We can E to edit it again. We can change that back. $320 by 240. Can save, Control X. Back to the launcher. Enter. Nice. Now we got the big version. Well, bigger visually, fewer pixels, still gets automatically scaled, which is what makes it bigger. Okay, awesome. So we can edit the code file. We can run the new version of it. We get the latest version. So we have kind of the full loop here of being able to develop on the device. It's not like obviously the most friendly IDE in the world. It's got no code completion. It's got no copy paste at this point. So yeah, it's definitely a harken back to the early sort of like 80s computer all-in-one devices in that respect. What do we want to do next? So honestly, this was... Oh, well, we can go and add the Control W. I never actually did implement the Control W to toggle the writable. But we have everything we need now. I do need to run to the restroom, so I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay. So in the editor, we want Control W to basically get us remounted as writable and open us back up to the file that we are already in. Need to actually be inside of here to do that. So first thing we need to know is the key code for Control W. Starts with a W. It's a Mighty Jokes thing. Mighty Jokes thing? Mighty Ducks thing. I want to go back to not writable, I think. So let's reboot this back to read-only. I think we'll keep it as read-only anytime it doesn't need to be writable, because anytime, like if I go to try to save code, it's not going to work when it's writable to CircuitPython. Okay, so we are here. We can go to the editor. Another thing I need to work on is moving the editor to inside of apps. Right now, editor is just a file called code editor at the root. I think we want apps editor, but we can do that later. Control W. Unhandled X17. All right, very good. So we can say in here, we'll put it with the rest of the control stuff. So elif k equals X17. We want to do basically the stuff that is in that test thing. All right, so we need JSON and we need argv file helper. JSON improt. I don't know if we need pylint. From okay, so that opens the file. We do want to launch editor. We do want that to be false because we're going to not read-only. We're going to writable to CircuitPython. And then this file here will be different, though. We don't just want to launch test.txt. It needs to be the file that we currently have open, which should be file name. And then after we have done all of that, we also need to say microcontroller.reset, which will be a hard reboot, which will cause bootpy to get launched again. Bootpy is going to see its argv file. It's going to do all of this stuff for us. That's the goal, at least. Okay, so editor saved. REPL thing here. So we're already in the editor, so we're not going to have the latest version. I can quit, though. Control C, Control D to go to the launcher. And then I'm pretty sure if I go back into the editor, we should get the latest version. So if I go E, I think we should have the new version of the editor. And so from here, Control W resets, goes to bootpy. I couldn't tell whether it was writable or not. Oh, it's definitely writable because our bar down here, system bar nav thing inside the editor is showing writable. So that worked. Control W now saves the file, resets, goes through, does everything. One thing we should do, though, is I do think it would be nice if it was a toggle so that we have a way to get back. So let's actually go back into editor, and I think we have a util dot read only, so that tells us whether it is currently read only or not. So I think we could say not util.readOnly, and that would make it be a toggle. Whoops, that's not how you do not in Python. Well, It is if you're talking about not equals. Which is kind of strange now that I realize it. Yeah. So I think that should make it toggle. So save. Oh, can't save it because it's writable. In that case, let's just reset it so that it will go back to read only. We get through the animation this time. I'll just save this now. Gonna be extra paranoid, explicitly make a change and save it again thing. Okay, so edit. All right, currently it's read only. Control W. There we go. Back to the editor. It's writable now. So Control W again. And it is back to readable. And then we also do have Control R to run it, so I could do that. And it will run. And then in this case, we could use either Control C or Control D. So Control C would quit to the REPL. Control D would go back to the launcher. And Q would also go back to the launcher. Yeah. One thing that would be kind of cool is that even possible? One thing that might be kind of cool is from the editor, when we press Control R to run the file that we are editing, it might be also kind of cool if we could somehow get this to come back to the editor after we're done running the file we ran, which is kind of tough. I think we can't the only way that we can do that is we pretty much actually need a very similar mechanism to all of this from BootPy. The thing, like, we don't need the read-only part. We just need the next code file and the remaining arguments. But we need that whole concept also in CodePy, which is the launcher. Because we go, like, we're in the editor, we press Control R to run the app, let's say the Matrix app. We press Q or whatever to quit out of the Matrix app. The next place we're going to go is CodePy. If we want to go to the editor instead, we pretty much have to, like, write a file that CodePy is going to read and then use to forward us along. I think we do this very, very first thing before we even touch the display or do anything. Yeah, and we'll end with a supervisor.reload, so it will stop the rest of the code. If there's an OS error, then we just pass. Then we just go to the desktop. No args, just launch desktop. Or launcher or whatever. We're no storage, we're not doing that, because that's a bootpy thing. So this time it's going to be 0 is next code file, and then 1 to n is args to pass to the next code file. These are CodePy arguments. I'm going to say CodePy or launcher, maybe. Desktop launcher, CodePy arguments. Okay, so we get the file. We read it. We could get rid of some of these prints at this point, I think. All this stuff is pretty much working. We do need to import OS because we do want to delete that file. We don't have read-only. These, so that will be, we can, I guess we'll do that. Seems a little silly to say if it's, yeah, it's kind of wrong actually. So we need to say if it's greater than 0, yeah, if it's greater than 0, then the first one is the next code file. If it's greater than 1, then all the remaining ones are remaining. Or why we had greater equals in the other one? Feels like it'd be wrong on this one though. Okay, if remaining args is not none, then we set up a file for the next code file. Cool. Set that to the next code file, we do that, and then we reload. We have to reload this time. We did not from bootpy, but we do here because we're in CodePy, so that we're not going to automatically just launch the thing like we were before. Okay, so CodePy now should have basically the same mechanism where if we write that arg file, the first argument we put in it will be another thing to launch, and the remaining arguments will get passed to that other thing. And so when we run, if we also say code, I'm going to actually call it launcher code pi args, launcher code file, args file. argv file name code.py with open launcher code args file writable as f.write json.dumps. So we are in the editor and we want to get back to the editor. So we will have to hard code code editor. Eventually that's going to get changed because we're going to be inside of an app, but that's okay. For right now, we'll do that. And then the argument is, again, the file that we are currently editing already, which is just file name. So we create the CodePy args file to launch the editor back to editing the file that's open, but then we launch the file that we're editing. When it finishes, CodePy is going to launch, and now CodePy is going to read our argv thing and hopefully launch back to editor for us. Whew, got a lot going on. Okay, so let's save that. Both of those, in fact. And yeah, so we're currently in the launcher. I think we can go E for editor, which will get us the latest version of this. So we can go Control R to run the matrix code. And then now Q should go back to CodePy, but CodePy should forward us back to the editor. Okay, it did, but The screen is different. I think we need yeah, we need the editor actually needs to ask for the right display size. Because right now it just gets display, and in fact this could be none. So so I just made this thing this week in order to do this. Fruit jam dot peripherals. We want to import request display config. And we want to call that request display config. And actually we want the big size 720 by 400. Okay, so what happened is the matrix code runs at 320 by 240 by default, and the editor is expecting to run at 720 by 400, but it didn't actually have the code to make that happen. So everything is more big than it should be, and like messed up a lot because of that. We are just in the editor. We should be able to go maybe Control C, Control D to go back to launcher and just try all again, I think. Did we shrink again? This window shrunk again. All right, so matrix edit. All right, there we go. Launch, Control R. All right, small screen size. Matrix code, Q to quit. Goes back to desktop, but that relaunches the editor. Editor should now ask for the right size. So the one thing, well, no, okay, that's just, yeah, I was about to say the one thing I noticed is now there's extra space here. That's just me readjusting the window though. So that worked. We can now, from the editor, we edit the file. We can go do the whole thing. And if we Control C to quit, Control D to just go back to launcher, that should take us to the launcher, and it doesn't forward us because we deleted our arg file. Okay, awesome. So we can go full-on round trip, editor, launch the code. When it finishes, we go back to the editor looking at the code. So we have like a full kind of IDE iteration going there, which is super cool. And we can do it all skipping like the boot animation in the desktop, right? Because like you could do all of that before. You would just have to like click through the desktop every time and wait for the boot animation every time. Well, the boot animation actually doesn't matter unless you're going to writable. I guess that's the next big test though. So what if okay, so let's edit matrix. Let's Control W to go to writable, because right now it's read only. So Control W to go to writable. Okay, now it's writable, so let's change the code. I'll just do this since it's a known change I can make. 720 by 400. We want to save this, so Control X. We should add a Control S that saves without exiting. We should be able to save without exiting, but that's okay. For now, it saved, it exited, so I can do Control D to go back to the launcher. And I can just do E again to go back to the editor, which is what I want to do, even though I'm just going to turn around and run from here. Control R to launch matrix. Everything is smaller now because we requested the bigger screen resolution, and the rest of this code automatically readjusts to the size of the display. So Q, sorry about that. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Q, that's going to take us back to the editor with the matrix file open. Nice. And then we're still in writable. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this back to 320, 240. and then save again, which is Control X. And then we do still have the same problem here, though. So we are here. We're going to have to go back through to the launcher. Okay, so that's definitely one thing we need. I'll just do Enter this time. Yeah, and we're back to the small screen resolution, which has the bigger glyphs, and everything runs faster. Sweet. And Q, that should get us back to the launcher. Very good. Okay. All right, so all of that's good. The Control X being the only way to save and causing it to exit also, I think, is the only part of that process that's a bit awkward. I'm going to move this Control R up to here with the rest of the control handling and add a comment like these ones. Okay, what is Control S we want to do? All right, so let's go to the editor. It's writable right now, so I'm going to actually Control W to go back to read only because I want to save code from my computer now. Okay, perfect. And then reload this. Unfortunately, this kind of closes each time. Okay, Control S should do nothing currently, so we should unhandled. Okay, 13. I'm going to make another one right after Control X. elif k equals x13. Yeah, x13. Control S. Oop. So we'll take just the save part. I think we need to print it. All right, so if it is that, then do that. We're not going to return, though. We're going to do everything except return. So it will save, but it won't exit. I think. That's what I'm hoping, at least. All right, so we're in editor. It's read-only right now. I have saved it here. We can, I think, just Control W, because I do want to get back to writable so that I can test the saving. One thing we should do eventually is make an indicator, because like right now I'm going to press Control S, and if it works, it's going to save, but we're not going to get any indication that it's done or that it worked, I don't think. So Control S. Yeah, so like nothing happened on the screen, nothing happened in the REPL. Technically, the fact that nothing happened in the REPL is actually a good sign for us, because the thing that didn't happen is we didn't get that message that said unknown key. So we know part of our if statement actually got hit. Theoretically, that will be it. So we can do Control R to run it. See if we're in the big resolution. We are. Nice. Okay. So Q, we'll go back to the editor. Change this back. $320, $240. Save, Control S. Again, we get no output. I'll give it a second. I don't know how long it takes. Control R to run. Yes, boom, we're on the small one again. Okay, Q to get back. And then W, Control W to get back to read only. All right, we're back to read only. We are in the small size. That's how it began. We can exit, of course. Ooh. I pressed Control D. It said delete. Interesting. It's not. I think it only deleted one space. Is that like a shortcut for the delete key? I would Control D. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'll use Control C to quit. Really, what I was trying to do was quit with. I was trying to quit and go back to CodePy without doing Control C and Control D, but I guess that's not possible from editor, which is fine. All right. Back to there. Okay, so we can complete the full cycle here. We can get into writable mode. We can change a code file. We can launch it to see the changes. We can change it again back to how it was or to a new way. We can launch it again. When we want to be done writing, we can go back to read only. We can always get ourselves back to the launcher. This is pretty friggin' sweet. I am pretty stoked about this. I think next stuff to do is I would like to get the editor into the apps directory, which means that it will show up on the launcher. Right now, the editor is just like a hidden thing. You highlight another thing and then you press E. But I would also like the editor to show up as an app in the launcher. And then if you launch the editor just from its icon, you'll get a prompt to either create a new file or to search for a file to open, like with a file opener thingy of some variety, which I'm pretty sure already exists in the original editor code, but I need to go back and figure out how it works. Do I actually have anything planned after that? I think that's the last thing that I am recalling, at least, that I have planned so far, is the editor appearing as an app. I'm sure I'll think of more stuff as we get going, but this is actually coming together quite nicely. Yeah. Is there any reason to show read-only from here? I don't know. Well, okay, another thing we want to do for sure is in the editor, we should be showing the hotkeys. Like right now, you just have to know that Control R is run and Control W is remount. Eventually, we want to show those on the screen, I think. Yeah. Nothing else major is really coming to mind. Feeling pretty good about all of this. Yeah. All right. I think I am going to call it a day for now there. It is a little bit early. I usually go about 2 hours, so about 5 minutes short. But that's not really enough time to start anything new. At least not anything that I'm thinking of here right away. Hopefully this preview that I'm looking at is wrong. That's weird that it's live, but wrong. Okay. Refresh the page and it caught up. I don't know what was going on there. I guess it stopped loading a while ago. Yeah. I think that is going to do it for now. So thank you to the folks who hung out in the chat. We got a new subscriber over on Twitch. Thanks to Mike on Twitch for the subscribe. Thanks to our friend in YouTube there, let's see, Sulik Sharma. My apologies if I mispronounced your name. But thanks for hanging out in the chat. I will be back for Deep Dive next Friday at the usual Deep Dive time of 2 p.m. U.S. Pacific, 5 p.m. U.S. Eastern, 4 p.m. U.S. Central, and then I will be back next week on Saturday as well at the usual time for my stream, 10 a.m. Central Time. So about 2 hours ago is when I started. I'll be back next Saturday as well at the same time. Thank you to anyone watching. I hope you all have a good rest of your day and a good weekend, and I will see you later.